Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. The story of Jephthah and his daughter is undoubtedly one of the most obscure narratives in the Old Testament, largely due to the events described in the book of Judges. In this video, I will thoroughly explore the story of Jephthah and his daughter, presenting the two main views and interpretations of this ancient narrative. Additionally, I will discuss the historical and cultural context in which this story took place, for a deeper understanding. At the end of the video, I will share my sincere opinion on the case and its moral and theological implications. Enjoy this content from the channel, leave your likes, share with others, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you in advance. Jephthah and the sacrifice of his daughter. Jephthah, in Phoenician Hebrew, is pronounced Jephthah. He appears in the book of Judges as a judge who led the people of Israel for about 6 years. According to the same book, he lived in the land of Gilead, where his father's name is also given as Gilead. Jephthah was most likely from the tribe of Gad. The land of Gilead was divided among the descendants of Gad, primarily those of Reuben and a portion for the descendants of Manasseh. The fact that his father is called Gilead and his mother is described as a prostitute may indicate that Jephthah's father could have been any man of that time. This reflects the complexity of his origins and the social context in which he lived. Jephthah led the Israelites in battle against the Ammonites. In exchange for victory over the Ammonites, he made a vow to God, promising to sacrifice whatever first came out of his house if he won. When he returned victorious, his daughter was the first to come out of the house, playing a tambourine and dancing in celebration. Immediately, Jephthah regretted his vow, as it required him to sacrifice his own daughter to God. It is said that Jephthah fulfilled his vow. The name Jephthah has Phoenician Hebrew origins, derived from ancient Phoenician, and means, will open, will be opened, or God will open. Jephthah is traditionally seen as one of the major judges of Israel. He is considered one of the principal judges due to the extent of the biblical narrative that involves him. However, his story also shares some characteristics with the minor judges, such as his short term of only 6 years. The story of Jephthah is often considered obscure because many theologians and pastors avoid the controversial question, would God accept human sacrifice? Did Jephthah sacrifice his own daughter to God? These are some of the questions I have been receiving recently about this ancient biblical narrative, and I will discuss them further soon. The story of Jephthah is found in the book of Judges, chapters 11 and 12. These chapters recount that the Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, abandoning him and ceasing to serve him. As a consequence, the Lord's anger was kindled against the people of Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of the Philistines and the Ammonites. Jephthah, born illegitimately in his father's house, was expelled by his half-brothers for being the son of a prostitute. He then went to live in Tob, east of Gilead. Outlaws gathered around Jephthah, and together with him, they attacked. The elders of Gilead then asked Jephthah to be their leader in the campaign against the Ammonites. However, Jephthah insisted on a permanent and more comprehensive position, and the elders agreed that, as long as he defeated the Ammonites, he would be the permanent leader of Israel. Trusting in God's power, Jephthah challenged the Ammonites. Jephthah made a vow, saying, I will offer to God whatever comes out of my door if I defeat the Ammonites. Victorious in the great war, Jephthah was met upon his return by his only daughter. He tore his clothes and cried out, Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, but I am bound by my vow. I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot go back. The girl asked for a 2-month reprieve to go up and down the mountains and weep over her virginity. Jephthah granted her request, and at the end of this period, he fulfilled his vow. The story ends by recounting that the daughters of Israel lamented Jephthah's daughter, the Gileadite, for days each year. Later, Jephthah was forced to fight against the Ephraimites, who had refused to help him in his battle against the Ammonites. The story is remembered for the slaughter of the fleeing Ephraimites, who were identified by their accent when they pronounced the Phoenician word shibboleth as Sibboleth. At that time, 42,000 Ephraimites fell. Jephthah is mentioned once in the Epistle to the Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 32, where he is praised for his faith in God. However, the question that remains is, did Jephthah offer a human sacrifice to God? Does God accept human sacrifices? From now on, I will discuss the two interpretations of this text, this character, and the entire story. The interpretation that many people have regarding Jephthah and his daughter is that he literally fulfilled his vow and sacrificed his daughter as a burnt offering to God. Some writers observe that, at that time, the Israelites were deliberately barbaric and did not correctly follow Mosaic law or God's commandments, even practicing human sacrifices. According to some scholars, this was widely done at the time, disregarding what God had commanded. This is the first interpretation, which maintains that Jephthah indeed sacrificed his own daughter to God. The Liber Antiquitatum Biblicarum of Pseudo-Philo names Jephthah's daughter as Sila, detailing and emphasizing her character. The author made a considerable effort to place this woman on the same level as the patriarchs, especially Isaac. John Chrysostom argued that God allowed Jephthah to sacrifice his daughter to prevent similar impulsive vows in the future, and that the annual lamentation of this event served as a constant reminder. Ambrose mentioned the story as an example of how sometimes keeping a promise or oath can go against moral duty. I respect anyone who believes in this interpretation, but I don't believe this is the correct interpretation. Now I will address the second interpretation of this text, with which I also agree. I share the same opinion for several reasons. When reading or hearing the story of Jephthah and his daughter, we are immediately reminded of Patriarch Abraham and the sacrifice of his son Isaac. It is worth noting that God prevented Abraham from sacrificing Isaac by sending an angel to stop the act and ordering him not to sacrifice his son to him. This demonstrates the importance of Abraham's faith. It is crucial to observe and analyze the Israelite God, the biblical God, who differs in character, love, and conduct from Canaanite, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, African, and other deities. God shows his love, mercy, and repulsion for human sacrifices and the pagan practices associated with deities like Baal and Asherah. In various biblical passages, God clearly expresses his aversion to such practices. The Israelites sacrificed lambs and other animals to God, but did not practice human sacrifices. Some argue that the Israelites of the time were depraved and engaged in such practices, but there is an important distinction in the text about Jephthah. Jephthah is described as a righteous man, a great warrior, and above all, a man who fears God. He speaks to God and makes a vow to him. However, despite Jephthah being recognized for his righteousness and faith, even praised in the book of Hebrews, he is considered merely a man who made a thoughtless vow. It is not that he sacrificed his own daughter to God. The truth is that Jephthah sacrificed what was most precious to an Israelite in ancient times. From ancient times, the most valuable thing for an Israelite was their own descendants. In Jephthah's case, he had to sacrifice his only daughter, as he had no other children. Thus, he compromised his lineage, condemning his daughter to perpetual virginity in isolation from other people. This interpretation is entirely consistent with the sacred scriptures and reflects the character of the biblical God, who abhors and detests the human sacrifices practiced by various peoples of Canaan and other regions of the world. Jephthah, being a man of God and righteous, would never have committed such an abomination in the eyes of God. An act that displeases God entirely could not have been performed by someone who seeks to please him. Therefore, Jephthah, by making a reckless vow, ended up sacrificing his own lineage, and his descendants were eliminated from the earth. He made a foolish vow, sacrificing his ancestry to win a battle, instead of offering something different. The book of Judges, chapter 11, confirms exactly this interpretation. Observe what Judges, chapter 11 says. When Jephthah arrived at Mizpah, to his house, his daughter came out to meet him, playing the tambourine and dancing. She was his only child, he had no other sons or daughters. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and exclaimed, "Alas, my daughter! You have brought me very low, you are the cause of my trouble. I have made a vow to the Lord, and I cannot go back on it." She said to him, "My father, if you have made a vow to the Lord, do to me according to what you have vowed, because the Lord has given you vengeance against your enemies, the Ammonites. But let this be done, let me alone for 2 months, that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, I and my companions." So he said, "Go," and he sent her away for 2 months. She departed, she and her companions, and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. At the end of 2 months she returned to her father, who did to her according to his vow that he had made, and she knew no man. I hope you all enjoyed this video about Jephthah and his daughter, and the reckless vow he made. He could very well have made another type of vow to God and still emerged victorious in the war against the Ammonites. Leave in the comments which interpretation you believe. Remember that I respect all opinions. God bless and see you soon.